Well, there are plenty of beautiful churches and other sacred sites throughout the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown and beyond, and Father Aron Maghsoudi has a desire to celebrate those sites. Father Maghsoudi is the pastor of All Saints Parish in Boswell, Holy Family Parish in Hooversville, and Our Lady Queen of Angels Parish in Central City. And throughout this summer, he'll highlight locations here in our diocese and neighboring dioceses that are rich in history and/or ethnic tradition. Today, he kicks off his series with a visit to one of the most cherished spots in Altoona-Johnstown, St. Joseph's Mission Church at Hart Sleeping Place in Carrolltown.
Have you ever been around a person who, while giving you all of the signs of friendship and affection and loyalty, after a while you begin to realize that their motive isn't always pure? Maybe they're trying to sell you something and they give off the signs of friendship. Maybe they're using you or manipulating you for their own selfish gain. Now, I think if we're honest with ourselves, probably in our interactions with one another throughout our lives, there have been times that our motives haven't always been the greatest. Sometimes they've been self-serving and self-seeking. We all need to examine our conscience when it comes to our motives. Why do we do what we do? In our region, there is probably no other place that symbolizes that more so than St. Joseph's Church in Hart's Sleeping Place, a location outside of Carrolltown up in Cambria County. This venerable and very old church is a living monument, a powerful reminder about our own motives. The building is marked with noble simplicity. The people here took what they had. They felled large trees that grew in this area. They built this church back in 1830. A simple, sincere, and straightforward faith. The story of the church is told not only in its architecture, which is marked with noble simplicity, but at the same time, the story of having a pure motive, a pure faith, is told in the many people whose lives have been enriched and people who have expressed their faith here over the last almost 200 years. The purity of heart, which is so evident at St. Joseph's in Hart's Sleeping Place, really begins with the story of Father Demetrius Augustine Gallitzin, commonly known as Prince Gallitzin. Born in 1770 at The Hague in the Netherlands, his father was a court official of the Roman Empire serving in the Netherlands. His mother was of German extraction, and Demetrius Gallitzin was baptized as an infant in the Russian Orthodox Church, his godmother being Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia. While he was baptized, he was raised in a largely non-religious or secular home, as was common during times of the Enlightenment, especially among certain nobles and royal figures. It wasn't until his adolescence that he received any form of religious education, being received into the Catholic faith at the age of 17 after his mother returned to her Catholic faith. As was customary at the time, when a young man came of age, he was sent on a tour of the continent to see some of the most important cultural and historic sites of Europe, to meet with some of the most influential and powerful people. Because of conflict and war at that time, Demetrius Gallitzin went to the United States to tour the new nation. Shortly after his arrival, Demetrius Gallitzin entered the seminary, St. Mary's in Baltimore, where in time he was the second Catholic priest ordained in the new United States. However, he is the first to receive all of his training for the priesthood in the United States. Gifted with an incredible intellect, he was skilled in language, diplomacy, philosophy, and all manner of academic disciplines. However, he saw that the gifts that had been given to him and the privileged life that he was able to live, not as a sign that God liked him more than other people, but as a sign of divine favor that was to be used for something beyond himself. After his ordination, Demetrius Gallitzin would largely serve in parishes that were on the periphery of a new nation that itself was a pretty rugged and untamed place. Eventually, he came to serve the church in a place known as Conewago, which is near the modern-day town of Hanover, outside of Harrisburg. While he was a priest in Conewago, he heard that a woman far away in a place known as McGuire Settlement, which is, I think, about 150 miles from modern-day Hanover, a woman named Mrs. Burgoon wished to be received into the Catholic faith on her deathbed. Setting out on horseback, he made the tedious journey to Cambria County, where there he found a small handful of Catholics who lived in the northern reaches of what would become Cambria County. Inspired by their faith, inspired by their tenacity, he sought to establish a parish at McGuire's settlement, which he did in 1799, eventually the town becoming known as Loretto. He would serve as the pastor of Loretto from 1799 until 1840. Because of his intellect, because of his gifts, especially in a frontier environment, he was called upon not only to speak about things of faith and the highest and greatest things, but he was also called to be a magistrate. He was also called to settle disputes. After rendering an unfavorable decision, some people became very angry at Father Gallitzin, and as a result of that, a mob gathered to assault him. While the mob gathered, one of the people that was present that day, a man by the name of John Weakland, described as sort of the Catholic Paul Bunyan of northern Cambria County, described as the biggest, strongest, and holiest man in the entire region, grabbed a fence post with his strong right arm, and he said, if anybody wants to touch him, they have to first come through me. As of yet, I have never harmed another man. It is said that John Weakland wrestled like bears and wolves. Whether that story is apocryphal or not, we don't know. And the crowd dissipated and went away. John Weakland's motivation is also a pure one. What worldly gain did he really have? He was committed to something bigger than himself, a straightforward faith. Prince Gallitzin had all manner of wealth and education and power at his disposal, but he chose to serve the people in this region as their priest, seeing the dignity that was inherent in all of them. While John Weakland could have easily gone along with the sentiments of his neighbors who were irate and angry at Prince Gallitzin, his motive was pure. I'm going to stand strong and steadfast for what is right, even if it comes at the cost of being unpopular with my neighbors. Prince Gallitzin was grateful for the strong defense and the strong right arm of John Weakland. Prince Gallitzin made a prophecy to John Weakland, and he said, one day, a descendant of yours will stand at the altar of God and offer the Holy Mass. Well, in time, John Weakland died at the age of 96, and he was buried, but later his body was exhumed and moved here to the cemetery at Hart's sleeping place. Long after his death, when his body was exhumed, they took it from the ground, and they noticed that while his body decayed, his right arm remained incorrupt and intact. A powerful reminder of the day that his integrity triumphed. In the end, John Weakland was who he said he was, a faithful person. The same during the day, the same at night, a person of sincerity. Unaware of this prophecy, in 1918, the great-great-grandson of John Weakland was ordained a priest, Father Bernard Weakland, and he offered Mass in this church, unaware of that prophecy, which is right next to his grandfather's grave. Only after his ordination did it become known that Prince Gallitzin had said that a descendant of yours would offer the Holy Mass here. Maybe it's a reminder for us of something powerful, that our lives are all guided by something higher. And if our motives are pure, if we have integrity, if we are able to be our truest and sincerest self, not only will we be able to see God in all kinds of things, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. And maybe we'll be able to peer beyond our own egotism and see the hand of God, His providence, that's so powerful in our own life, guiding us and drawing us closer to love itself. While Prince Gallitzin would begin his ministry in the Allegheny Mountains at Loretto in 1799, in time other Catholic settlers began to populate this region. In 1830, a number of Catholic settlers had arrived in the area known as Hart's sleeping place, and Prince Gallitzin dedicated a log mission church there in October of that year. As the 1830s rolled on, Prince Gallitzin's health began to deteriorate due to his age and due to other concerns, and he needed a successor. That successor came in the person of Father Peter Henry Lemke. Father Lemke is one of the great clerical characters, a very human person, a very real person. He had an irascible temperament, but at the same time, an incredible sense of passion and drive. He was the eminent curmudgeon. Father Lemke would found a town near Hart's sleeping place, which he intended to name after Prince Gallitzin, but after Prince Gallitzin refused the honor, it was named Carrolltown in honor of America's first Catholic bishop, John Carroll. When Prince Gallitzin died in 1840, Peter Henry Lemke took over his vast mission territory, which was hundreds of miles with thousands of souls. A person, as I said, of irascible temperament. Sometimes Father Lemke got in confrontations with the Bishop of Philadelphia, and after the Diocese of Pittsburgh was established in 1843, even with the Bishop of Pittsburgh. Seeing the good that was in Father Lemke, Bishop O'Connor of the Diocese of Pittsburgh asked him to find German-speaking priests to return to his homeland to find people who could speak German and minister to the German immigrants here in western Pennsylvania. On that trip back to Germany, he met a young, ambitious Benedictine monk by the name of Father Boniface Wimmer. Germans have a great love of Benedictine monasteries, and the Benedictine abbeys of Germany speak deeply to the sentiments of the Teutonic people, with ideas of stability, of order. The Benedictine monasteries once played an incredible role throughout Germany, but especially in Bavaria. Father Wimmer wanted to refound a monastery after many monasteries had been suppressed in the early 1800s. However, Father Lemke appealed to him and said, "Why don't you bring that ancient practice of Benedictine monasticism to the New World?" Father Wimmer came along with a number of candidates for the monastic life, and he arrived in New York in 1846. Father Lemke was a week late showing up, but nevertheless, he brought him to Carrolltown. Well, things didn't work out here. The Benedictines were only here for a short period of time, though they have continuously staffed the parish in Carrolltown. Eventually, the community moved to Latrobe. Their influence here was great. The parish here at Hart's sleeping place would function up until 1860, when it was assumed into the parish at Carrolltown. From 1860 until 1903, this church was only used on rare occasion. From 1903 to 1960, it was reopened as a parish to serve a little mining community called St. Benedict, which is just down over the hill. Since the 1960s, this church has only been used on special occasions. Now, the story of St. Joseph's Church is a story about being pure of heart. You see it in the life of Prince Gallitzin, a person with so much, who was motivated by a spiritual motive to give all of his fortune away. You see it in the life of John Weakland, a person who went against many of his own neighbors to be a person of integrity. You even see it in the life of the beloved curmudgeon, Father Lemke, who in spite of his humanity and his temperament, was a person who did seek God in a very pure and very sincere way. The word for pure used in the Beatitude by Christ is katharos, and that word is a word that's sometimes used to describe when corn is separated from its chaff, or when a military unit was purified of perhaps lackluster soldiers. It's a reminder that there is something that is pure and untainted. Maybe it's a reminder for us. If we've been the victim at some point in our life of somebody who has used us for their own gain, somebody who has not appreciated who we are, maybe it's a reminder, and maybe this church is a reminder, to have a pure motive. With that comes peace of mind. Do we examine our hearts and our consciences so that, like this building which is marked with noble simplicity, we too would live a life of noble simplicity, of integrity. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. They shall see God in all of his goodness and be aware of his presence, peering beyond the veil of our own egotism.
Thank you very much, Father Maghsoudi, and that beautiful and historic church you just saw will be open for public tours 2 times this summer, next Sunday, June 29th from noon until 3, and then again on Sunday, August 24th from noon until 3.